We are going to put an end to the notion that the American taxpayer exists to fund the federal government. The federal government exists to serve the American people.
I never meant to go into politics, but back in the 1960s when I began, it seemed to me that the government was taking more of our money, more of our options, and more of our freedom. I went into politics in part to put up my hand and say, stop.
Ronald Reagan believed in freedom from too much government. Throughout our history, we've defended our freedoms from many threats. But today, our own government wants to dictate our every activity.
Our Constitution and our democracy was not easily acquired, and it's not easily kept.
Pacific Legal Foundation came out of Ronald Reagan's welfare reforms in 1971. Ron Zumbrant became the Deputy Director of Social Welfare. He was in charge of the legal work implementing the welfare reform program. Then when he left the government, he left to help found the Pacific Legal Foundation.
Our first day was March 5th, 1973. The day before, the Sacramento Bee ran a big article on the front page of the Sunday paper. And it was, big corporations are forming their own public interest law firms, and went on from that. About 10 months later, after we had a track record, the Bee wrote another article which was factually correct and was actually supportive.
It was really the first of these, what I call freedom-based public interest law groups, funded by altruistic citizens, people who want to contribute private money, as opposed to the government-financed groups that generally were oppressing ordinary citizens.
I first got involved around 1975 when the Pacific Legal Foundation decided to get into property rights and protection of private property rights. They take on anything that is an unnecessary invasion of individual liberty in America.
In 1987, the United States Supreme Court ruled in the Nolan versus California Coastal Commission case. This is a case where the Nolans wanted to rebuild on the coast in Ventura, and the Coastal Commission said, fine, but we're going to take 1/3 of your property, meaning their entire beach. They ended up ruling that this policy, the California Coastal Commission, was an out-and-out plan of extortion.
Many scholars have called it the most significant case in the 20th century because it created really a new constitutional recognition of the limitations on government with regard to regulating private property.
The Army Corps of Engineers tried to put John Rapanos in jail for 10 years because he moved some dirt from one side of his property to another without their permission. PLF came to his aid and won a major victory in the Supreme Court.
What the Pacific Legal Foundation has done for me and my family, I can never repay. I mean, no matter what, I owe so much to those people that I'm indebted to them for the rest of my life.
The Johnsons are cranberry farmers in Massachusetts. When their cranberries are mature, they flood their fields. The cranberries float to the surface and are skimmed off before the field is drained. The Army Corps of Engineers said they were creating a wetland and wanted more than $70,000 in permit fees.
Very happy that the Pacific Legal has saved us. I have no conception of where we might be. We've pretty much, my son and I both, pretty much decided that we are not giving an inch.
The city of Elk Grove, California wanted to charge $250,000 in fees to give Jonette Banzone and her husband a building permit.
I happened to see Pacific Legal Foundation's name when I was doing my research, and that's when I sent a letter to Miriam Hubbard asking her if there is, asking her if this case that we have is something that their foundation would like to take.
We took this case for several reasons. First, the egregious facts. The city wanted almost $250,000 folks trying to build one residential home. We also took the case because it gave us a great opportunity to apply the precedent that Pacific Legal Foundation set in Nolan versus California Coastal Commission. What ultimately happened is the city rescinded the ordinance imposing these fees.
The Constitution says it quite clearly in the Fifth Amendment, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. But what if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says you can't use your private property because they want to protect a bug or a plant or a mouse? Paul Fisher and his wife Gail owned a home on Perdido Key in Florida. Hurricane Ivan destroyed it in 2004. Before the Fishers could get local permits to rebuild, the Fish and Wildlife Service declared their private property to be critical habitat for the Perdido Key beach mouse.
We didn't have a clue when we bought the property that there was such a thing as a beach mouse. Our goal was to remodel and update our house here. Ivan came in and tore apart the duplex. We were left with nothing.
It isn't clear that Congress ever intended the Endangered Species Act to be used to take away people's private property rights. But over the last 30 years, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has done just that.
And that's what we're dealing with right now. We're paying our mortgage payments, we're paying our property taxes, and we can't do anything with this property. And what's wrong with this picture? That's where we are.
The Endangered Species Act has been used by overly zealous government bureaucrats. There is no real balance between economic interests and environmental interests, and much of the economic activity could be continued without endangering the environmental objectives at all. But unfortunately, many of the government bureaucrats see it only one way, and that's again where the Pacific Legal Foundation has come in and done a terrific job, both to provide that balance and to, without in any way trying to destroy the environment, nevertheless protect the property rights when it is appropriate to do so.
There are so many on the other side that we need to push back against. When we're talking about so many, I mean not just government, but there are government agencies from local, state, regional, to the federal government. We are constantly facing the likes of the Sierra Club, Earth Justice, Center for Biological Diversity, World Wildlife Organization. These folks have millions and millions of dollars that they are using every year to try to force control on land use, try to impose egregious overregulation.
You see, the theory here at PLF is we never give up. We never give up. We're trying to establish precedents that are good for society, that protect private property rights, that provide reasonable environmental regulation. And we can keep working on that year after year, case after case, until we're able to do that.
It takes an organization like Pacific Legal Foundation to look through all of this minutia, all of the history, and offer for adjudication in a peaceful manner a solution to an injustice. That should be appealing to everyone.
What is Pacific Legal Foundation over the years, and this is now 35 years of activity on their part, one of their major jobs is fighting against overzealous bureaucrats, overwhelming odds. PLF really is the legal representative of the unspoken citizen, the person that without PLF there'd be no one to provide the legal representation.
Ours was the first revolution in the history of mankind that truly reversed the course of government with three little words: we the people. We the people tell the government what it is allowed to do. This belief has been the underlying basis for everything I've tried to do these past 8 years. We the people are free.